Well, Dr. Stephen Christie is a former pro-choice advocate turned champion for the pro-life cause. He joins us today all the way from Miami to talk about his book, Speaking for the Unborn. Doctor, thank you so much for being with us today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Good morning.
Well, let's get to how you came to write this book after formerly being in the pro-abortion camp, because that's a big change.
Yeah, big change. I grew up as an atheist in a progressive household. I went to a very pricey progressive high school where it was understood that anyone who was educated or sophisticated or a thinker was obviously pro-choice. We didn't know why, but it was obvious. And even through law school, I went to law school and then medical school. Even into medical school, I'm having an audio question. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, we hear you great. We hear you great.
Oh, yeah. So even in medical school, if you'd asked me why I was pro-choice, I wouldn't have been able to articulate a reason. And what changed me, I guess, if I had to say it, was in a word, truth. In medical school, you actually study the facts about science, about life and embryology. And as Shakespeare says, the truth will out. You know, we learned there's actually a definition of life, that it's not a matter of philosophy or religion or politics, but that science, that what is alive is a purely scientific question that science has fully answered. And that's, in every embryology book in every medical school the world over. And interestingly for me, there was actually a precise moment. If we have time, I could tell you what it was. In medical school, outside the anatomy lab, my first year was a little anteroom that had extra storage things in it, covered in dust. Nobody went into them. I went into it one day, and there was a cabinet up against the wall, and I looked into it. I peered into it, covered in dust, were jars with little babies in them, in formaldehyde, in various stages of development, embryos and fetuses. And as I stared at them, I became horrified how irreverently they were being treated. So the next day, I found our embryology professor, who was a great teacher, and I said to her, I told her how upset I was at how irreverent it seemed, how it seemed wrong. And she grew agitated and angry at me. And she pointed to me. She said, "They were never alive." And I had called them babies. She said, "They were never babies. They were embryos. They were fetuses. They were never alive, never alive." And I stopped and I looked at her, and she stopped and looked at me. And it was that Shakespeare line, "The lady doth protest too much." I knew the truth at that moment, and I knew she knew it too. And that was the beginning of the change for me.
Dr. Christie, that is a very powerful story. I got chills when you mentioned what you discovered in that room, and I want to commend you on offering us a pragmatic, a concise response to pro-choice arguments in this soundbite time of communications. Brevity is essential. So how can we achieve that necessary brevity?
Sure. So, like I'm sure both of you, I'd stumbled across wonderful pro-life arguments for years based on science or in the law and reason, morality, social justice concerns. And I thought it was time to organize them and compile them and edit them into one source in a user-friendly format that you could actually bring with you into discussions. But I also learned that the average attention span was less than a minute. So as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. So I took and worked and edited these rebuttals until I had them in the 30-second format, because the work was a joy and a privilege, because 62 million aborted children in the U.S. alone deserve our greatest efforts.
Now, does your experience in both medicine and law give you a unique perspective for either side of the topic of abortion?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. I give a lot of live talks, and I'm usually introduced, they say, as a doctor, I know science and embryology, and as a lawyer, I know the law, and as a father of 5, I know a bit about babies and pregnancy, and as a husband of 25 years, I know a lot about the challenges women face balancing career and family life. But for me, probably my greatest credential in speaking on this is the fact that I spent the first 30-plus years of my life as a secular pro-choice liberal. So I know exactly what, why, and how the other side thinks about abortion. And having lived in both the pro-choice and now the pro-life worlds, I have a unique perspective by which to address these issues. I like to say when I was pro-choice that I learned the arguments, but when I became pro-life, I learned the truth. And this book that I put together and its accompanying website are that truth.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there a couple 30-second bites, maybe just 2, that you could give to us just so our audience would understand it?
Sure, and I hadn't picked any out. A lot of times, especially as a man, I'm accused all the time of being a misogynist, of being anti-women. We hear this all the time. And here's just an example, randomly, of a 30-second rebuttal. I say that I'm not anti-women, I'm just anti-killing. And in fact, since nearly 500,000 baby girls are aborted each year in the U.S. alone, my position is fiercely pro-woman. Yeah. So that's just an example. I try to keep these things pithy, short, and again, it's very important, I think, as I sit in the presence of a bishop, I keep these based on science, the law, ethics, social justice, and I avoid, unless I'm speaking with a religious person, I avoid religious arguments in this case, because the language of the secular pro-choice person is not the religious arguments. Now, I happen to be a wacky Catholic who goes to daily mass, so I'm prepared for those as well. But I found that it's when you speak to a non-religious person and you start bringing up God or the sanctity of life or sin, you're sort of handing them a club with which to beat you over the head. So I keep my arguments non-religious unless I'm speaking with a religious person, although everything that I do is certainly formed by my Catholic faith.
Well, this book is so important, and you have a book and a website to assist us in what can be just very difficult discussions. How can viewers access these resources?
The website is speakingfortheunborn.org, has fantastic resources, video teaching series, photos, and videos you can download to your phones. The book is on Amazon, Speaking for the Unborn. My name is Stephen Christie. If you like the book, please give it 5 stars on Amazon. If you don't like the book, please give it 5 stars on Amazon.
So we're saying 5 stars.
5 stars all around. Thank you so much, Dr. Christie. Yeah. It's been great to meet you, and thank you for your work and your expertise.
I'm grateful for the opportunity, both. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
All right.